Hello there. How's everybody?
Wonderful.
Good,
Y'all just
good.
thought y'all was
Good.
gonna
Hey.
get the night off, didn't you? You were hoping. Boy, I know he's running late. He'll never make it. I came in on two wheels,
Ah,
but I am here and I'm glad to see you all. Let me see. I've got some documents pulled up here. Let me see. I want to look at a couple things here as well. Uh, let's see who the leader in the clubhouse is this week. Ooh, Carter's up over 1,000 points. Look at him. She's showing out. Oh, Kashana is the star of the week. She's already completed her evidence for the semester, the policy analysis. She has already completed it all the way through. And so congratulations to her. It's already been graded and posted in TaskStream. So
Go ahead, Shua.
she has set the curve for everybody this semester. So let me share my screen and let's look at the weekly schedule. We always start with our weekly schedule. Let me change that over here. So there's our two leaders in the clubhouse, Carter on points and Kishana on getting their evidence done. Now, we'll go over your work when we meet this weekend. You know, all these like policy analysis, success, all these assignments, ethics. That's our content for Saturday. So I'll highlight all the ones of you that have caught my eye. I've dropped you all a note. If you read the comments, I read all of them, and I've commented back the things that caught my eye, and we'll cover those. That's what we'll do on Saturday. So that's good. All right, so let's look at our weekly schedule right quick before we get to our ethics assignments. All right, so tonight is Zoom class 3, the 18th. We'll do our ethics assignments and disciplinary data manual and CEDARS tonight. Um, and we're going to look at court cases and legal practice, and we're going to go over our items on Saturday, Sundays. As you know, you have presentations of ethics scenario 1 and 2. You should have a presentation again. I don't care what it looks like. What I care is what it says. We got to get out of the habit of making it pretty and thinking that that's going to song and dance our way through in leadership. It won't. Um, I'm interested in content, not presentation. So right now we're on schedule for this weekend, coming weekend in Charlotte. The bad weather is supposed to be out by Thursday. Um, Somebody said the other day that we're supposed to get permission to cancel classes. Um, the only person I asked permission from is my wife, and she really don't care. So I'll make that decision. So be monitored. If the weather lingers longer than we think, be monitoring your email. I'll make a call early on Friday morning, one way or the other. I'll send out notice what we're going to do or not do this weekend. I think that should give people time, but we should know by then if it's going to be safe to travel on Saturday morning. I think it's going to be fine, but you never know. You never know. So that's where we are. The next time we'll meet after that is March the 4th, and we'll continue along. Our last residency weekend is obviously at the end of March, the 1st of April there. And I will be back the following weekend if anybody has to do any residency makeup. Right now, everybody's good. All right, so that's the weekly schedule. All right, for tonight. Tonight Charlotte has Essex Chapter 3. Sarah has the Disciplinary Data Manual, or the Assistant Principal's Bible, as it's known as. And Vonda's going to do CEDARS and going to tell us all about that. Because it is specifically for a data repository for policymakers. And hopefully she will tell us what that would mean to us and the efficacy or the value of that. That's I'm just telling you what it's advertised as. A data repository for policymakers. This is a policy class. I thought we'd take a look. All right, I'm going to stop my share. And Charlotte, if you're with us, we'll start with chapter 3. Excellent. All right, Charlotte, you're still muted. There you go.
Okay. All right. You see the main screen or you see all of the slides? It doesn't
We
matter.
see all of them.
All right. That doesn't matter.
I don't care.
Okay. All right. I had chapter 3, student rights and restrictions. And the first thing that I want to talk about was in loco parentis. I think I'm pronouncing that right. So in place of parents, it stated that school officials, they may exercise a reasonable degree of control over the students that we supervise. So topic one,
Reasonable.
excuse me,
Reasonable degree.
reasonable.
All right.
Yeah, reasonable degree.
All right. So let's pause right quick. Let's remember our standards for reasonable, arbitrary, and capricious. We remember those standards. I mean, that's definable in court. I mean, when we say reasonable control, but we have to steer clear of in that reasonable, we have to steer clear of being arbitrary or capricious. What's arbitrary?
When you just do things and it
In a
may
random manner or specifically in student discipline or student due process or student rights and responsibilities. What we're talking about there is we don't do the same for everyone.
Mhm.
Again, Carter and I are out back smoking, and Christian catches us, or was it the other way around? Carter caught me and Christian smoking. He punishes me and doesn't punish him. That would be arbitrary. That's not subjective. That's subjective. We can look and see, is there a discipline trail for him? We were doing the same thing. So when we talk about reasonable, we have to make sure that that under that reasonable statute that we're not being arbitrary. That's one of those, in place of the parent. And the other is we can't be capricious. If you remember from the example before, you know, Carter and I get caught smoking. He lets Carter go back to class. He punishes me, but he pulls out his gun and shoots me right there behind the gym, graveyard dead. That's way too much punishment for the crime. So we can't be capricious. And so when we talk about reasonable, there is a legal standard that we have to understand. Arbitrary and capricious. That's where that reasonable that's the substance of that standard. We can't ever forget that. Arbitrary and capricious. All right, I interrupted you enough. Go right on.
Okay. Topic 1, the freedom of expression. It aligns with the First Amendment that states the freedom of speech and press and the rights of people to peacefully assemble. There was a 1960s case, Tinker case, that was mentioned in this chapter, where it states that students have the same constitutional rights as adults, and that when they get to school, that doesn't end. We can't, but their freedom of expression can't disrupt the educational process, and it's unconstitutional for us to discipline students for peaceful wearing of symbolic expressions of whatever their opinion is about something, as long as it doesn't interfere with the school routine. As far as freedom and expression to protest and have demonstrations, as long as they're peaceful and they don't violate school rules and destroy school property, they are allowed. School officials, however, we can regulate the time, the place, and the different activities that they can do. And it is an expectation that school officials should expect some minor disruptions um, when they allow these to occur. But during these demonstrations, students cannot deprive other students of having an orderly environment for their instruction. They can't obstruct corridors and prevent free movement. So those that are not participating in those demonstrations, they can't hinder those individuals from being able to move about. And these demonstrations or protests can't be disrespectful to authority and um, or any lawful activities. Also, we can ban, they can be banned on the basis if it creates a discomfort or conflicts with views of different school of the school officials. Topic 3, I address dress and appearance. As far as safety with students, we can restrict students from wearing like long hair or jewelry if they are around dangerous equipment or they have different classes that may require their hair to be up or things like that. Health of students, we can require students' hair to be clean and free of parasites. Also, students have the right to self-express. So they can reflect their own values about something, their background or culture, and even their personality, unless it's disruptive. So a student can definitely have green hair, purple hair, whatever. However, they couldn't have lights or something like that because that would be considered disruptive. As well as that we can restrict what we feel could be disruptive, like limiting them wearing t-shirts that have vulgar things on them, lewd, um, or defaming language based on race, color, gender, religion, etc. Oh, wrong way. My third topic was search and seizure. So this aligns with the Fourth Amendment, and it protects all citizens against unreasonable search and seizure. School officials have to balance this with maintaining order and discipline and protect the safety and secure the environment. There are the differences in the searching of a student's person versus desk and chairs. Desk and chairs are considered like school property, but when you have to search an actual student, there is a little bit, well, there's a lot of difference there, and it can be invasive. Reasonable suspicion. This is key to initiate a search. There was a case of 1985 case, New Jersey versus the TLC, where a teacher was suspecting a student was smoking. So this case said that there's not a warrant required to do that type of search because it was something that had to be done very timely. As far as book bags, you can get complex with searching book bags, or it can be considered intrusive and require stronger evidence. In Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools, we have some things where we can search book bags, and I'll try to touch on that a little bit later. As far as pat-down searches, if it's justified, the school official can take someone of the same sex with them and search the student. And that's if the another person of the same sex is available or is possible to do so. So under that third one, another thing I wanted to mention, information received from students and teachers. If a teacher or a student gives information to an official, they have to be reliable in order for the search to happen. And an informant can't be anonymous. So we can't search someone and they not tell who they are. Schools personnel should should conduct search in a private setting. So if I have to search a female student because I should want to minimize embarrassment, I should take her to a private setting with another person. And school searches involving law enforcement must be with probable cause, and they have to have a search warrant.
All right. Before we go any further, let me summarize this section. In loco parentis, the reasonable standard is arbitrary and capricious. It can be neither of those. All right. Negligence. There are three standards of negligence you have to be understand because you're in place of the parent. That's what in loco parentis means. It doesn't mean my crazy parents. It should, but it means in place of the parents. So get your Spanish right here or your Latin.
Mhm.
And so this is Latin, not Spanish. So what that means is Negligence. You can't be negligent in the care of these children in your charge. There are three types of negligence: misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. Mis Let's start with nonfeasance. Nonfeasance is you had a duty to act and you didn't. That is a civil case. Misfeasance is you had a duty to act, you did, but you did the wrong thing. You didn't intentionally do the wrong thing, but you did the wrong thing. And then third is malfeasance. You intentionally did the wrong thing to cause harm to a child. That one is not only civil, it's also criminal. You can lose your house and your freedom over malfeasance, malpractice. So that's the standard. That's all under in loco parentis in place of it. Now, Dale's rule for searches. Charlotte mentioned probable cause. School administrators, write this down, have a different standard than law enforcement. Our standard is reasonable suspicion, like a
Mhm.
report or anonymous tip or whatever. But still, I would not search a child in any way without law enforcement present. Let me say that again. Do not search children without law enforcement present, even if you're doing a reasonable suspicion search. Never strip search a kid. Don't put your hands on a kid. Law enforcement should do that. And again, for them to do that, there must be probable cause, which is a much higher standard. This is how you don't lose your house. Don't you ever put your hands on a kid. Don't ever do a strip search. The police won't even do that, not at the school. Always have law enforcement present when you do a search, understanding for them to do any kind of a pat down or removal of clothing item search, they have to have probable cause, a much higher standard. And you say, well, Dale, what is that standard? The police will tell you. You consult with them. If they say, I don't have probable cause, then you can't be searching that kid. Don't make, I don't care, even if you have the same sex, don't be doing that. That's a hot topic of debate over in the unemployment line. So, you better let that one go. So understand, you and law enforcement have two different standards: reasonable suspicion, probable cause. To lay hands on a kid, you need probable cause. Reasonable suspicion will not stand up in most court cases. Unfortunately, it should, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. And now back to the lice problem. We don't see lice problems as much now as we did 36 years ago when I was an elementary principal. We had no problem. We used quail. We'd bring a kid in, cut their hair, shampoo their head. In that same community now, with what's going on in society since then, we've gone so far back to the Stone Age, somebody would probably shoot you over that now. So my point is, don't be treating kids. Don't just send them home. Don't be getting them shirts to put out. Don't do any of that. Just send them home. Don't be treating their lice. I can't tell you the number of times that I put quail in a kid's head for lice. But don't do that anymore. It's a different time. I did that 1,000 times and never thought anything about it. I would not do that today. I'm telling you, don't lay hands on kids today. Don't give them shirts. Don't do any of that. That will be used against you. Just send them home. That's the only safe way to proceed in those dress code violation issues. Just send them home. All right, let's move on to topic 4.
Topic 4, due process, and you've already mentioned that. It connects with the Fifth and 14th Amendment. Basically, fundamental fairness, procedural. It guarantees that the steps will be followed by anyone every time. You'll be notified of the charges, and that the student will be heard.
Substantive. Don't pronounce
Substantive.
the T.
Sorry,
Substantive comes
substantive.
before procedural, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Substance is what is the law, what is the policy. This is a policy class, so we got to know what the policy is. What is our what is our discipline policy? That's the substance of the law. And then procedural is, did we follow it?
Okay.
So,
Substantive.
so for
Um,
our purposes, now you've got it right for this, but for our purposes as policymakers, there's a difference for us as policymakers. We have to be concerned with the policy because we're the people who make it, not carry it out. Central office people are not the one that carry it out. The school level people are the one that carry it out. They're concerned with procedural. But for our purposes, remember, Charlotte has it right for school people and how the law is, how it's written. But for central office people, our perspective is what's the content of our policy, and making sure that our people are trained in that and our policies are all legal. They've been vetted by our legal department, and then we put them in place. Then we have to worry about, do the people out in the building actually follow the procedure that we've set in the policy, the substance of the policy. So for EDLS, for superintendent, for central office people, this is a superintendent training program. We are most concerned with the substance of the policy, making sure that we didn't just kind of go off the beam and succumb to local pressure from people like school board members or county commissioners and write some crazy policy that's going to get us sued when our people carry it out. All those things must be vetted. They must be vetted. There are, there are 6 steps in due process, and Charlotte's going to tell us about those now.
I don't know if I go through six process. I didn't do all that, but I guess you would tell me, you'll correct me. Um, that there's a valid reason that this policy exists, the actions are necessary, and that it guarantees freedom or property can't be taken without it being justifiable, without justification. You want to add anything or
Nope.
correct me?
Keep going.
Okay. All right. Vagueness document is something else I saw under this section. It says that the student isn't penalized for behavior if he or she can't understand what the policy is
All
saying.
right.
They
How do
can't.
we make sure? So Sarah's going to talk to us about the disciplinary data manual next. That's what the state says we're paying for schools. This is what we will not allow. It's up to the local school board at the behest of the superintendent to adopt what at the local school district level that makes sure that there is no vagueness in our rules.
Student code of conduct.
There you go. I love Daphne, by the way. Y'all just have to, Daphne lives this every day. I have mad respect for people who live this every day. Where she works and what she does, this really is her Bible every day. And she understands that she's got to follow that code of conduct. And what we do is we publish it. We have the teachers go over it with their kids. We even have them sign a pledge, the parents, that they have read the darn thing so that we won't get hit on the vagueness doctrine. That's exactly why we do that. She's exactly right. I love working with smart people. Continue on, Charlotte.
The fifth topic was child abuse. So as far as teachers, there's an expectation that teachers, they should be able to detect some signs of child abuse and neglect, and they're required to report those. 49 states say that it's mandated. Um, However, if no evidence comes out after a teacher had said that they suspected that, then the teacher isn't held liable. Some visual observations that were mentioned when students present difficulty walking or sitting, unexplained bruises, they have whelps, they're withdrawn, and they weren't before, isolated from classmates, and they're wearing clothing that seem to be concealing injuries, tardiness, so forth and so on. Those were some visible things that you could that could be indicators that child abuse or neglect could be happening. Now, failure to support in most states. Um, if a person fails to report child abuse, it's considered a misdemeanor with a fine of $1,000 plus a jail sentence. There was a case in this section, Evans versus Antioch United School District in California, where some parents they alleged that a special education teacher that she had slapped and pinched and doing some abusive things to or verbally abused some students, and the admin knew it and didn't report it to authorities. They sued 5 employees plus the district, and the district had to pay $8 million to those 8 families, and that's considered the largest amount ever reported.
It's always the cover up that gets you. You always remember that. Now, I think we've mentioned this before, but let me remind you, the law changed a few years back. We no longer go by the terminology persons responsible. Now the terminology is responsible person. You say, well, Dale, they just reversed the 2 words. What difference does that make? It's a big difference. Under the old doctrine, there was only 3 or 4 people in your building that were required to report if they saw something or suspected something. Principal, guidance counselor, social worker. Now, under the responsible person doctrine, everybody, let me say this again, everybody that gets a check at your building is required to report. Everybody that gets a check. If they are a paid employee, they are a responsible person. You have to make sure that everybody that works at your building, not just the teaching faculty, that everybody in your building understands they have a duty to report. Otherwise, again, bad things can happen not only job-wise, financially, but also this can bleed into a criminal trial. You know that we had one recently in Charlotte where failure to report abuse, and the district separated from that principal, and he had to bear that on his own. Because there was evidence that reports had been made and he had not followed up and had not reported them to law enforcement. And so it did not go well. So just understand that everybody's a witness and everybody's a reporter that gets paid in your building. That's a good reminder for all of us. Continue on, Charlotte.
So some lessons learned. I learned that students do have rights, but it should not disrupt the learning environment. That's never okay. And also something interested in this chapter, some people still support corporal punishment in schools. I thought that went out like 20 years ago, but in this chapter it says courts view it as an acceptable form of discipline when administered in a reasonable manner.
Except unless your district does what?
Puts it in their
code of conduct that corporal punishment is not allowable. I'm not, and again, I don't know everything, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I don't know of any of the 114 traditional public school districts in North Carolina that still allow corporal punishment. I won't speak for charters and privates. I don't really know of any, but I can't speak to them. But I don't believe there are any in North Carolina, traditional public school districts that allow corporal punishment. So while the court might view it as okay, if you violate board policy, that will not be okay.
Right.
So you need to understand that. Just because it's allowable doesn't mean that your district allows it.
Right.
Now,
Exactly.
and I wanted to get to this point. Corporal punishment's not just jerking them up and patting them like I did when I was a teacher. I mean, that was our go-to move. We thrashed them. But corporal punishment, anything physical, making them stand up, making them run the steps, making them walk the track, any of those kinds of things that there's a physical component is corporal punishment. You need to be careful of that. because teachers do kind of slip around and do some of that stuff.
Mhm.
And you got to be very careful with that. If you see a bunch of kids out running around the playground and you're wondering why they're running around, you might want to find out. That would be considered, that is corporal punishment. Anything that has a physical component, it's not just paddling. So you need to be careful about that and make sure that your teachers understand what corporal punishment, if you're at the building level, and if you're at the central office, that principals understand what corporal punishment consists of. It's not just paddling. All right,
Mhm.
moving along.
All right. So my implications and those at Carver High School. We have a large population of Hispanic students, so some of them wear symbolic gear or necklaces and things of that sort, and that some they have that right, but some are associated with gangs and things like that. I realize that I have to make sure students get to tell their side of the story. As far as Winston-Salem, Forsyth County schools, we have metal detectors that were purchased by our district, so it's an expectation that we do searches. We do have to go through book bags. Even today, we got a different set of metal detectors provided by the district. Security came in and they were called open gate, and it made the process different, and those particular detectors only pick up weapons. At my school, we have a need to search for vapes and things like that. So we are going to probably have to do some combination type of searches. Um, that students we they can be well, as a school official, we have to make sure that we maintain a respectful and safe school. Some of the vector trainings that our district have recently mandated is one on child abuse. And as you mentioned before, it does go into great detail saying everyone is accountable. We even have some training for students with some things of that sort. And it showed even a example where a custodian had to report. And so when you mentioned the thing about search and seizures, I have not physically searched students on their person, but we have come to find out that a lot of the girls do hide the vapes in their bra. So another administrator showed me how to search that and just have the students, you know, like lift or whatever, and get the remove those things because
Yeah.
the metal
No,
detectors will
no,
those up.
no putting hands on. That's right.
Correct. But
There is,
they are like slipping in
yep, there is a
but
way
they're
to do
going off.
that. That is correct.
So the questions I had, the first question, do Carver High School has a dress code? According to our district policy 5131, student behavior, code of character, conduct, and support, and it was last revised and approved by our board August the 22nd. It says students can't wear clothes that have tobacco and drugs and nudity and things like that. They cannot wear shirts without straps, tank tops, see-through clothes, pants that sag, hats, bandanas, and things that cover their face or conceal their identity, even showing their undergarments, or any symbols or styles or attire linked with gangs. So at my school, we have a large population of students that may be affiliated with gangs. So even though we have this dress code, it's not in all of the cases. We don't necessarily focus on those, such as the sagging. Culturally, a lot of the students will do that. So we do have it according to the school board policies. However, it's not necessarily follow thoroughly at my particular school. Question two, how did this come about? It was our superintendent's initiative when she became superintendent right after the pandemic. What was the reasoning behind that decision? The board was aware of different threats and messages of violence, and some gang-related apparel influenced the student behavior. So, to assist the school staff in identifying clothes and other items linked with gang activity, they put this policy so that it will be district-wide. However, it stated that the guidelines are fluid due to changes in schools and that this was not an exhaustive list.
Mhm. All right. Excellent. All right, let me share something right quick. Let me pull it up first. Um, this is kind of a setup here from Charlotte, and thank you for that, Charlotte. Hmm. Let me go a different way and get it. I thought I had it up, but I see that I don't. So let me get it right quick. Okay. Here we go. Oh, now, all right, let me share my screen now. All right, so Charlotte concluded with superintendent in Winston-Salem made a special initiative out of gang-related activity paraphernalia clothing. Why do you think that is? Does she just hate gangs? No. What we know is gang-related behaviors are one of the things that lead to the persistently dangerous things that happen on our campus. As we're going to find out from Sarah in our next session tonight, when the Elementary and Secondary Act of 1966 was updated in 2001, it's called No Child Left Behind. They put in a persistently dangerous statute. There are 9 acts of violence that if they occur on your campus, if they occur too much frequency, we basically have to close that school down. And the principal loses their job. It's worse than low performing. Well, those 9 things are assault with a weapon, death, kidnapping, all the four sexual ones, but there's 17 acts of crime and violence. 9 of them are acts of violence. They're considered persistently dangerous. When you go into Power School to put those in, a PD prefix comes up, and we'll see that in a few minutes in Sarah's presentation. And so one of the things that we know of, these are the 4 big things that lead to persistently dangerous: gang activities, weapons, assaults, a lot of sexual stuff where they, you know, assault females, and that's part of rituals and those things. Bullying, cyberbullying is worse. Sexual harassment, sexting, social media, that's sexting. Now, you say, well, Dale, we all know this stuff, except I presented this 14 years ago when I was the keynote at the DPI conference at Curry in Greensboro. Well, actually 13 years ago in 2011. Spring of 2011, this was my presentation. I hired a criminologist. Some of you have heard the story before, and this is what we presented. But the idea here is, if we go through this and it has all these things, you got to identify your local gangs, all of their clothing, their tags, their symbols, all this stuff, because the law of antecedent behaviors is, left unchecked, the little things become the big things. And primary to violent offenses is gang activity. Other than the sexting, texting, social media stuff, the cyberbullying, other than the virtual stuff, more problems arise out of gang activity that lead to these persistently dangerous activities than anything else that happens in our schools. And so that's why many superintendents have made eradicating gang behavior, gang graffiti, gang symbols a big part of their administration, because they know that that's how those schools get on that persistently dangerous watch list. And if they don't get off after a year, then we have to give the parents either the opportunity to go to another school. We did that one time. Roberts at Cochran, we gave the kids at Cochran, 30 years ago, and they all chose to go down to Ballantyne to Jay Robinson, and what a disaster that was. And so that's the last time we ever attempted to let parents choose to go somewhere else. So the other choice is reconstitute the school. Basically, you close it and reopen it with a whole new staff. And so that's about as bad thing can happen in the school business. So that's why, to avoid that persistently dangerous label on schools, you get 2 years. Your data's bad the first year, that's more than 1 incident for every 200 kids of enrollment, or 5 for every 1,000, ever how you want to figure. That's a half a percentage point. If you exceed that, you're on watch list for year 1. The state comes out and does an audit. It gets they get in your business too. I'm telling you. And if your data doesn't improve and you don't pass your audit, then you're out. The school gets reconstituted. Nobody puts kids on buses anymore. We tried that one time. Cochran to Jay Robinson, they rode the bus 2 hours each way. No, not happening. So that's the whole point of that gang initiative in Winston-Salem, is to avoid those. That's the smaller behavior that leads to those violent offenses. All right, Sarah. Now, this is the assistant principal and principal's Bible, mostly the assistant principal. It's the disciplinary data manual. Now, why we're so interested in this as a policy law class is DPI is like the central office for the legislature and the State Board of Education. So in this document, you will see laws, 115C, and you will see policies from the state board. It is DPI's responsibility to take those laws, take those policies, put them together, and interpret them on how you will run your schools every day. And so you must know this manual. It gives you scenarios for how to enter incidents into Power School. Now, some of you say, well, I know Power School. Just because you've seen the teacher portal does not mean that you've seen this module under the disciplinary, under administrative portal. It is complex. You're playing for your job here. You get this wrong and you can go home. It's very important, but understanding the policy law background of this is DPI took the law from the General Assembly. That's under 115C. That's all the public school laws. There are 545 of them. You don't have to remember them all, but 288 you should know it because that's duties and responsibilities, and you should know the one 346 for superintendents. But they put this out. You have to follow these rules in disciplinary data reporting because it goes to the federal government, it goes for state. They're the people who send us money. Without this data, they flip the switch. That means they don't send us our money this month. So you got to understand this is most important. All right, I've set you up now, Sarah.
Okay, can you guys see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this disciplinary data manual is enough to, I think, scare anybody of legal, of getting sued. And I wish I had had this class when I first started as an AP. I think it would have been really beneficial because the first school I was at as an AP, I did a lot of discipline and didn't have really a lot of background knowledge on this manual. So this would have been really helpful about a year and a half ago. But anyway, there's a lot of information. It's, I think, 165 pages roughly.
And not too many pictures.
Yeah. So to condense this was, and I know I'm going to leave a lot out, so just bear with me. But so the purpose is basically to ensure compliance. And like I said, the legal part is enough for, I think, any of us to be scared, like you said. So they're basically, schools are required to report discipline data to make sure that they're following the laws related to school safety and student well-being. And it gave you some different examples of different federal laws, like Every Student Succeeds requires the collection of data related to suspensions, expulsions, violence, and then the states use this data to basically meet federal reporting requirements to make sure that they are addressing any disparities to maintain school safety. So I try to condense this into 5 and then had some subgroups. So it talked a lot about school safety, and we know that any discipline data that provides incidents, insights like fights or bullying, drug-related behaviors, helps schools to keep track of their safety issues. And by monitoring it, schools can take steps to address safety concerns, put measures in place, and then allocate different resources to create a safer environment for the students and staff. Student behavior, collecting discipline data allows schools to analyze the behavior, also to track the trends and intervene whenever necessary. And then the educational outcomes it was talking about suspensions, talked about expulsions, disciplinary actions, and then the impact it has on academic performance, because we know anytime students are not in the classroom because they're suspended, there's learning loss, they're losing time for important instruction, and then it's just a trickle effect. So if they're missing class, they're missing instruction, that can lead to other issues, which can eventually, it could affect graduation rate. Students can have struggles academically at home, and it's kind of a vicious cycle.
All right, let's stop right there.
Okay.
All right, policymakers. Go back one slide, Sarah.
Okay.
Why do they have this in this manual? Now, they have all these infractions and the locations and all this stuff, and they classify it like, unacceptable behavior or reportable offense or persistently dangerous. They have all these things that are not allowable in schools that the federal and state government funds. But the one thing they don't have is the punishment, the consequence. That's up to you at the local. And what they're telling you is, while you've got to report all this stuff, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you're the policy-making body, the central office superintendent through the school board to adopt what Daphne said a few minutes ago, that code of conduct. The code of conduct has the same stuff as this. It's just condensed down. Here are the infractions, but it has the punishment, the consequences. So as a policy maker, I told you the story. I had a due process hearing on a kid with 2 knives at Providence High School. But the lawyer said we were being capricious. We'd given him too much punishment, but he was reading the elementary code of conduct and not the high school, because we had separated them out, because we had figured out we were giving too much punishment. We were giving the same punishment for infractions to elementary kids as we were high school kids, and they weren't nearly as serious. And with the idea of trying to keep kids in the building more and keep them on track, engaged instructionally, we had to modify. So we split it into 2. An elementary one and a secondary one. That's what, for policymakers, that's what you've got to understand. The state sends you this manual and says you will follow this to the T, or you're going to lose your house, may lose your freedom. But you get to decide what the consequences are. And that's one of those things that you have to engage in policy with policymakers at the central office level. Because as we get more and more into this policy, partisan politics, some people out in the public, anything short of shooting them is not enough. But we know that that's counterproductive, especially suspension. And so we have to balance safety with educational outcomes is the whole idea here. It's not easy. And that's what Sarah's telling us tonight, is it's not easy. But we have to be part of that balance. It's not like, well, the state said we had to do this. No, the state doesn't say we have to do anything other than report that these things happen. It's up to us what consequences we give. And that's the piece where we have to step up to the plate and say, there's got to be a balance here. Yes, we want safety in our schools, but it just can't be about punishment. It has to be about restorative justice as well, and restorative practices. Now, I know that that's not popular lately because people think that's DEI or something or another. I heard that recently, restorative practices. I know in one district they changed the title of the job title of one of my students because they didn't want that out there anymore because they were getting pushback. But the right thing is always the right thing. Whatever you call it, we need to be focused on rehabilitation, restoration, rather than just punishment. We can't. We're not in the penal system. Now I know organizationally, the 2 closest organizations, nonprofits in the world, are schools and prison. They run exactly the same way, but we can't run schools as prisons. We got to do something to stop the school to prison pipeline. And this is our opportunity through our code of conduct when we interpret this manual in terms of what we're going to do. We're given the option as school districts of what we're going to do with these kids. Now, again, it says so in one of the first pages in this manual that disciplinary data is organized around incidents. We report what happened, not consequences, what happened as a result of. They're not into that. That's not what they're into. They're into, we want to know what happened. It's up to you what you did, and you have to own that one way or the other. There is no protection from the state. You have to stand up and say, we think this is the right thing to do. That's a very important part to understand the difference between this manual and your district's code of conduct. The code of conduct comes out of this, but is policy for your district. Soldier on, Sarah.
Okay. All right. So the second topic that I tried to narrow down was on reporting requirements. And the main point to take from this is that they need to be accurate, consistent, and standardized across districts. So it outlines the legal obligations that schools have in reporting discipline data. It includes details on what types of incidences, again, out of school expulsions, incidents of violence, and schools must report the specific categories of misconduct, including serious offenses like weapons possession, bullying, drug-related activities. And it must be reported annually to NCDPI. and then they take all the information and share it with state and federal entities. And any in-school, out-of-school, or expulsion or criminal act, all of that is on page 7. So instead of listing every single one, I'll kind of scroll through it here in just a minute when on one of the other slides, but it's all on page 7 if you would like to review it.
Remember, the Office of Civil Rights data comes out of this. That's the federal data, OCR.
And then the third thing is the data collection procedures, and it's all about consistency and providing guidance for schools on, they should collect the discipline data on and use specific codes, which I'll show you that here in just a second too, and to use and emphasize accurate record keeping. So it's all about consistency. It's all about organization, keeping things in a way to collect the data in a specific way. Includes types of violation, students' demographic characteristics, so their grade level, race, gender, obviously not their name, and then action taken, and then any relevant context, such as special education status. And then the fourth thing is data reporting procedures. They need to be timely and accurate. So if you have an incident of serious nature and you don't report it in a timely manner, that's a definite no-no, right, Dr. Lamb?
2448.
Yeah. So that's
2448. You got to understand that all disciplines all of them got to be in 48 hours. Any of them that are reportable or persistently dangerous that involve law enforcement have to be in 24. And if you go past that, your house is in jeopardy. That's real. And
there'll be a list that I'll show you guys here in just a second too, but that's just that's the fourth one. And then the fifth one is data analysis and utilization. So this is all about understanding the trends, patterns, and informing decisions. So you're basically looking at your data and trying to figure out, here again, are there patterns related to it? So you analyze the collected discipline data, understand it, and this helps administrators identify if there are subgroups of students that need additional support and interventions, whether it's behavioral support or conflict resolution. And then the policymakers can use it to inform decisions, such as adjusting discipline policies, providing professional development for staff. So, as I mentioned, the school I was at previously was very similar to a school I was at my first few years of my career. And so we had a lot of intensive PD related to behaviors early in my career. And then I had about a 6 or 7 year lapse where we didn't have any. And so I think that's very beneficial for staff too, just because everybody is not on the same path. Everybody's not from the same background and doesn't have the same experiences. So having that PD, I think is huge for staff as well. And then allocating resources to schools with high discipline incidences. So lessons learned. Here again, there's a lot, but the main thing is basically report, be thorough, be consistent, be timely, and make sure that you do everything you can to keep yourself and your staff out of the newspaper, off the news, and out of the courtroom. So just making sure you're compliant and keeping track of everything. And I think for me too, I always ask questions. I'm not going to be the one that's going to, even with my principal, with just handling discipline, we talk about everything we do discipline wise. So I think that's good too. Implications. So school districts here again are required to collect accurate data. So it's not just collecting data, but make sure it's accurate and actively using it to inform decisions and improving policies. Making sure it's fair. and discipline. So I think we talked about that in our first weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the discipline has to be fair. If you have two students that get into an altercation, a fight, and you have to be fair and consistent. You have to. And it serves as a powerful tool in creating a safe and equitable, supportive environment for all students. So that's definitely something that schools across each district need to do. So it talks about acts of crime and acts of violence. And I'll show a chart that kind of goes with each one. But acts of crime, you think about illegal activity. It gives you several examples here, but then there's going to be another one I'll show you too. But then I looked at the board policies in Watauga, and it was very specific on theft, trespassing, damage to property, drugs and alcohol, assault, all the things. And I think anybody could look at your board policies and see something very similar to that. And then this just shows some of the reportable criminal offenses. Assault involving use of a weapon, resulting in serious injury, homicide, kidnapping, rape, indecent liberties with minor, and it just the list, as you can tell, goes on. So then to compare that to acts of violence, and here again, I highlighted the board policy in Watauga that has to do with assault and threats, but they involve physical harm, such as fighting, bullying, physical aggression, and assault. Even if it's not criminal, violent acts are serious and must be reported for disciplinary action. So I listed the board policy, and then the reportable behaviors: assault, bullying, communicating threats, cyberbullying, discrimination. But then I'm going to skip over off of the slide. I'm going to go to the actual manual.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look, this just goes, we're talking about the different codes, incident site codes, participant offender types, and then you go down, and this is where it's talking about the violent crimes and reportable offense categories. And then here on the right, you have the different code associated with each offense. So it's got a state reporting code, and then the description, and then the abbreviation. And then if you scroll down, it has the reportable behavior categories. Same thing. So everything has an abbreviation. So everything is consistent.
And here's where you need to pay the most attention on that big long middle column there where it has PD. That's your prefix. That's a persistently dangerous. That counts. It's reportable and it counts against your total because that's an act of violence. The ones that are just RO are crime and violent, or just crime. And so this is how the reporting, and so Sarah's just highlighted there's some little inconsistencies between the Watauga board policy and this. This is what you've got to follow though when you're reporting it. But anything that's a PD, that's persistently dangerous, that's reportable and is going to count against you. RO is reportable. It's not going to count against your persistently dangerous total, but you got to call the police. And there are 4 UBs, unaccepted behaviors. There's one. That one doesn't have one. Roll down a little bit more. There's 4 UBs that have a general statute number behind them. That means that even though they might just be UBs, you still have to call the police and report them. That's 4 inconsistencies. Well, you just got to understand that. Come on down, slide on down a little further. Let's see if we can find one of those. On down.
There's a lot.
All right, roll back up. I'm looking for communicating threats is what I'm looking for. And even though it says it's UB, the prefix is UB, there is a general statute number behind it as a suffix. If we'll roll on up, I'll find it in a minute. There's 4 of these. Oh, let's see. Come on up. Excessive tardiness.
Anybody sees it, yell it out.
But anyway, even if we don't see them,
It's on there
we're
somewhere.
going to get to it in just a second here. There's one right there.
Oh, I see
All
it.
right.
Yeah, right here.
All right. UB, disorderly conduct and communicating threats. You notice that there's a general statute number behind that. You got to report that to the police. Disorderly conduct, there's two. A fray that's a group fight like in the cafeteria. Now, that reportable offense has got one, but if it says RO, that means you got to report it anyway. But therefore, there are three of them right there. If those three things happen, disorderly conduct, an affray, communicating threats, you still have to call the police. Especially understanding, roll back up a little further till we get to offender types. People say, well, we don't know who did it, or it wasn't a kid that did it, or it was just a random person off the street that did it. Come on up. It does not matter. If it happened on your campus, you must report it. Even if it was a faculty member who did it, right here. These are the people. If they committed this at your school, you have to report it. Student from this school, teacher, staff, administrator, parent, caregiver, or relative. Student from another school, non-student, non-staff, other professional, non-professional, other, unidentified offender, volunteer, or school resource. It doesn't matter who did it. You have to report it. That's first rule to understand. And so a lot of times those communicating threats or disorderly conduct are parents. You have to put it in. It goes in your data collection and you have to call the police. Now, again, we organize around incidents, not outcomes. Don't be the idiot that said, well, I didn't suspend that kid, so I don't have to report it. Now, suspension is an outcome. We report incidents, what happened, not what happened as a result of that. So that's complete and accurate. That's part of it. I've seen that too many times. I had a principal who argued that he didn't have to report a death because it happened, even though it happened at 2:45 in his parking lot before the buses had even cleared. A death in his parking lot. He argued that he didn't have to report it because the bell had already rung. I can't work with people that dumb, and I didn't. He had another job soon. My wife will tell you through all of our travels, I'm married to one of them EDCI ladies, the bane of my existence. I'm married to one of them. And so she would tell people wherever we'd go, don't be quizzing me about what Dale does. This is not the Baptist church. You didn't hire a preacher and get a song leader. I have my career, he has his. And we rarely talked about anything that I did during the day because I didn't have anything good to say because I did bad stuff. When I got to central office, I didn't do good stuff. And so, but she asked me one time what happened to this lady at Vance High School. And I said, well, she didn't have to go home, but she couldn't stay with us. I had to let her go because she just wasn't reporting data. When she had been hired as an AP, she hadn't had a legal class. She was one of those new leaders for new schools, alternative pathway people, hadn't ever had a school, didn't know anything about discipline reporter, and they told her to get the number of suspensions down at Vance High School. So she stopped putting them in and just made her own suspension form and was just Xeroxing them and sending kids home. I can't tell you how much money we had to pay back to the state, how many EC kids were suspended more than their 10 days. Oh, my Lord. It cost us $1 million. She didn't put discipline data in for over a month. We had over 800 suspension days counted as their EC kids. Oh, we got sued. We had to pay lawsuits. Oh. She was lucky that we only sent her home. And her saving grace is that she came alternative pathway and wasn't really licensed. But that meant we had to take the brunt for her. We had to pay it all out. She lost her job, but she didn't have the liability. But could you imagine for about 6 weeks in a high school that size, had over 800 suspension days, 170 separate kids, and 25 of them were EC, and they all exceeded their 10 days? Jesus. It took a year to get out from under all the lawsuits and the mess that caused. It took a year and $1 million. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about here. Accurate and complete. Understanding that there's consequences. We get paid for the number of kids who come to school every day. And if you manipulate that number, we get paid for kids that didn't come. It makes the state mad as fire when you do that too. And they want their money back with interest. The feds, whoo. Now, the feds, somebody has to go home. Not only do they want their money back, they want to know what you're going to do to make sure that never happens again. You have to have a plan when you misspend their money, do something that dumb. And so I'm going to say this, and I'm probably going to offend somebody tonight. And truthfully, that's my intention. If you're using third-party software to collect disciplinary data in your district, the whole purpose is to not be complete and accurate. That's to edit your numbers. There's no other reason to use a third-party software like Educator's Handbook. You can put it all straight into PowerSchool. You don't have to put it in a third-party software. The reason people do that is so that they can edit their numbers. That's my experience. Now, prove me wrong. Because I hear all the time about major and minor infractions. All right, Sarah, you just read that whole manual. Did you see anything in there about major or minor? You did not. State says you report it all, don't they? We consider things major or minor by the punishment that we give them. State says that's not a factor in disciplinary data reporting. You report the incident. We don't care what you did. That's up to you. That's your policy. But you will report what happened. You get caught not reporting, you talking about they will money whip you. They will money whip you. You get caught not reporting, not being accurate and complete. You talking about touchy. Now, this is a touchy subject. People at DPI that run this because the Office of Civil Rights is on them and the General Assembly, they have no humor whatsoever about getting this stuff wrong. They have no compassion for you either. I'm just telling you right now, you get caught shading your numbers, you're done in our business. You can't survive it. You cannot survive it. Daphne's got a question.
Yeah, so when you talk about using like Educator's Handbook, there is a point at which we also use the software Writeback, which supposedly uploads everything in Educator's Handbook into PowerSchool.
Supposedly,
Right.
as the kids would say, supposedly.
So I'm trying to figure out how that works. What I have noticed when I use Writeback is that it only really questions us about suspensions, ISS, OSS. It doesn't really hit the other.
What I'm talking about,
offenses.
it's supposed to be easy, like easy IEP to make the paperwork easy, but the real reason is you can edit the number of things that go into PowerSchool. That's why it's there. Let's just be honest here. We're trying to cut them down. Now, she's no longer works in your district, but I heard somebody in your central office a few years back say, I don't let principals put those PDs in. They have to get my permission to put them in. And I'm like, I'll probably have to go to jail just from hearing you tell that. What do you mean? You don't let principals put this in? You don't get to make that decision. They have to put this in. That's the law. You get caught editing these things and we all go home. But you're exactly right. These third-party softwares, what triggers them is the consequence. And the state says, very first thing, this is not about consequences. This is about incidents. And to be accurate and complete, you have to report everything that happens. And even if you just did a conference with the kid, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. And how are you tracking? If you don't have any location in those things, how are you tracking this stuff? Get more, find out where your hot spots are, what you need to be working on, change your supervision pattern or schedule, or get more help. I think I told you before, you got to have one adult for every 45 kids in like in the cafeteria or the gym or whatever. How do you, how are you tracking this? Making sure that you've got supervision on your campus. You get caught doing this stuff, not having adequate supervision, not knowing your numbers, having two staff members with 300 kids in the cafeteria because you let teachers have lunch on their own. see, we're getting real creative because of teacher shortages on release time, duty-free time, planning time. We're getting real creative on that. So what we're doing now is giving some teachers that 30 minutes of duty-free time that they're allowed during the day rather than before and after school like we've always done. We're moving, some places are using it for lunch and using skeleton crews in the cafeteria. That's, again, it's all fun and games till somebody gets their eye put out. Now, I am not dumb enough to tell you, I'm dumb, but I'm not dumb enough to tell you that, if you're at Garinger High School, if you got 100 adults in the cafeteria, you're not going to stop a fight at Garinger, but you're going to win when we go to court. The whole point. All right. All right. I'm not going to be misogynistic here. I'll just open it up to the group, men and women. Who knows who Al Davis is or was? The late Al Davis was the owner of the Oakland Raiders national football team. And they always were mad at Al because he always had a bunch of renegades and outlaws, and he had to get some of them out of jail so they could play on the weekend. And when they would ask Al about that, he said, "Just win, baby. I don't care how we just win." That's our point here when we're doing law and policy, especially when we're doing this one, is I can't keep you from getting sued. My job is just win, baby. We don't lose when we get sued and go to court over something stupid like not being complete and accurate in disciplinary data collection. Something that's as clear and as objective as that. This is not a gray area thing here. You report it. It's real simple. If it happens, you report it. And you got to understand that this is one of those that you can lose so easily in court because this is not an opinion thing. You don't have to sway a jury or get people to believe in you or any of that. Did you put it in or not? It's binary. Did you put it in or not? This is the low-hanging fruit here, folks. This is are you conscientious? This is, success is based on IQ and conscientiousness. Are you, you don't have to be smart to do this. Just follow the rules. Daphne, you have another question?
So I'm still stuck on using educators handbook. So
Yeah.
how is it that districts get away with that?
Because they want to.
But the state doesn't have any way of going back.
Well, the state tells them they're not supposed to use it to do what they do, but they do.
Okay.
And, we tried and we did for about 10 years. We took out the deal about third-party software, that it wasn't allowable, but it got back in because people lobbied and want to sell software.
Right.
And they argued that, instead, what they should have said is, we want money, you got it, we want it. What they said, we'll make teachers' lives easier. We'll make administrators' lives easier. I mean, and who doesn't know what Easy IEP is?
Yeah.
And they all said, look at Easy IEP. This is like that. It's not. Not at all. But people wanted to make money. And again, their argument is if people use this to cheat, that's not our problem. You got to catch them. Our software is not intended for that, but why else would you buy it? You wouldn't, unless you wanted to. And it does, it gets your numbers down. These are minor fractions. We don't have to report them. That's not what the state says. No, that's not how it works. And so, yes, for about 10 years, we did away with third-party software. But we're back to it again because, people lobbied, gave people some money, and they changed the rules again. And the schools like it because, again, they can, they can move their numbers down without having to actually do anything other than just manipulate the data. But again, the general public is dumb. I'd rather be at a school that was reporting what was going on and addressing it than one that nothing ever happens, because stuff's happening. It is. But they're just ignoring it. That's the part that scares me. I'd a lot rather be at a place that I can see what's going on and say, yeah, they're reporting what's happening, and they're taking steps to fix that. But I'd rather be involved with the known than the unknown. these places, oh, nothing ever happens here. Well, sure it does. Well, sure it does. Y'all just don't, you cover it up and don't report it. And unfortunately, that leads to a lot of abuse for kids, unfortunately. All right. So let me check my notes here, make sure that I have hit all the things that I want to on that one. And so here's my final here. This happened in Charlotte. Car was being chased by the police. I think it was Oakhurst. Is that the one that's right there on the main road? Anyway, the car crashed, hit a telephone pole in their front yard. Got out, fought with the police, had a weapon, had drugs. Do you have to report weapon and drugs on your campus? An assault absolutely happened on your campus. If it happens on your campus, on the way to the bus stop, at the bus stop, on your bus, at your campus, on the bus again, at the bus stop, on the kid's way home, you have to report it. Now, if the kid goes over to the malt shop to get a milkshake with Archie and Jughead, now you don't have to count that. But portal to portal goes in this. What about if kids when the DECA kids go to Atlanta every year and get drunk and tear up the hotel room? Happens every year. That DECA bunch is a hard drinking bunch. Do you have to report that? Well, yeah. But I've had people argue, well, it didn't happen on our campus. I don't have to. Your kids did it, didn't they? Should you call the police if you're the chaperone? Do you have them call the police? Absolutely. Oh, that'd be bad. It's bad PR. Well, we don't do disciplinary data collection for PR or otherwise. I know you're saying, well, but you're asking me to punish myself. Yes, we are. That's what we pay you to do. Here's an idea: get out and work a little harder. Maybe all these things won't be happening. Maybe be a little smarter, work a little harder, be a little more, intentional about making your school safer. That would be helpful. And it's still a struggle, I know, in some places, but you got to do it. You absolutely, because again, the penalty is so great on you if you get caught not, and the lawsuits that you could lose over this, not just your job and your house, you might lose your freedom over this. The lawsuits that come out of this stuff all the time when kids get harmed. I told you, there's a case right now in Bellingham, Washington, where 3 assistant principals are facing serious jail time for not reporting because it was just a habit in their school. We just don't report stuff. And they didn't report a girl being sexually assaulted. They've got a criminal. They're going to get jail time. They're going to get prison time out of this. You better know. You better know that. All right. So CEDARS, that's our last one for the evening. What is CEDARS? Here we go.
Can y'all see?
We can.
Right, let me move this out the way so I can see. So CEDARS is the Common Education Data Analysis and Reporting System. The objective of my presentation is to explain CEDARS, to identify the modules for administrators, and to look at some of the board policies for Scotland County Schools, and to discuss the implications for myself and my district, as well as the lessons learned. So CEDARS, in 2007, North Carolina DPI was awarded a $6 million grant to develop the North Carolina Common Education Data Analysis and Reporting System, also known as CEDARS. CEDARS is North Carolina's pre-K through 13 state longitudinal data system. It tracks and stores detailed information about individuals over a prolonged period of time. CEDARS is comprised of various DPI source data collection systems, a student and staff identification system, a centralized data repository, and associated reporting and analysis tool, which is known as business intelligence. It plays a crucial role in shaping policy. CEDARS is designed to track and analyze student and teacher and school performance over time. CEDAR includes staff UID system, that's a unique identifier, our staff numbers, we have our student numbers, as well as the data warehouse and reporting system. So the purpose of CEDARS is to assist in improving educational outcomes through data-driven decision-making. It assists with school and district improvement plans, with implementation of effective strategies, with the development of policies, and analyzing trends and relationships. It enhances transparency and accountability in education, and it provides a central system for student and school performance tracking. The key functions of CEDARS includes data collection and storage. It gathers student, teacher, and school data statewide. Analysis and reporting, it supports school and district improvement strategies. And compliance and accountability, it ensures adherence to federal and state policies, such as Every Student Succeeds, which was signed in 2015 to replace No Child Left Behind. And it governs and it provides funding to our schools, federal funding to our schools. It emphasizes state control over education policy, and some of ESSA's provisions include state accountability plans, standardized testing, support for low-performing schools, focus on disadvantaged students, student data reporting, and teacher qualifications. And also, we have to comply with FERPA, Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, which was enacted in 1974. It applies to schools receiving federal funding from the U.S. Department of Education. And another function of CEDARS is the integration with other systems. It links local, state, and federal education databases. So the users of CEDARS include NCDPI officials, policymakers, local education agencies, and school districts, school administrators and principals, teachers, researchers, policy analysis, legislators, and other stakeholders, which include our parents and students. So the key components of CEDARS include the data calendar. The calendar has the school year, the data categories, the purpose, the descriptions, the law, the source of funding, the due date, the frequency of submission, the position responsible for reporting, and the collection system, as well as the DPI contact. It includes the data reporting and program monitoring for civil rights data. It's required by the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights. It has the disciplinary incidents, which was discussed, as well as the conduct violations, and it has the bullying and harassment and the different general statutes that are associated with each one. And it also applies to the Title IX, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. The data management resources, how information is transmitted electronically. It also has a component of data privacy and policy. They have a DPI privacy team that looks at the FERPA and the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. And that is a federal law that protects the rights of parents and students in schools that receive funding from the U.S. Department of Education. And it has 8 protected topics to include political benefits of affiliation, mental and psychological problems of students or family, sex behavior or attitudes, illegal antisocial self-incriminating or demeaning behavior, critical appraisal of family members, legal recognized prohibited relationships, religious practice and affiliation, and then household income. Demographics and finances is also a component of CEDARS. It uses EDI, Educational Directory and Demographic Information Exchange. LEA information such as the school number, the school name, the administrative contact and address and grade levels are in that directory. There's statistical profile, which provides information on public school pupils, the personnel and finances. School expenditure data, the expenditure report is listed for state funds. It has a PRC code, which is the accounting and allocation of the funds, and then it has an objective code, the description of the expenditure. Has school student enrollment, school personnel, and school expenditure data. It has the facts and figures, the highlights of NC public school budget, the charter school membership by the district. And it also has the student accounting data, which has the principal's monthly report. It has their enrollment, the membership, the attendance. This information is received from the student information system, and it's a source for calculating the following: the average daily membership, the average daily attendance, the initial enrollment, and the membership on the last day. Other key components are the job route and discipline data. General Statute 115C 12, 21, and 27 require that North Carolina schools report annual numbers of acts of crime and violence, suspension and expulsion, and enrollment in alternative learning programs. LEA and charter schools must compile a list of dropouts by a designated date. Economically disadvantaged information is also a part of CEDARS. Any student identified by public school unit as being directly certified, meaning that they receive SNAP or TANF or are a part of the food distribution program or on an Indian reservation, they are directly certified. Categorically eligible is their status is either homeless, a runaway, a migrant foster, a Medicaid recipient, or they are enrolled in Head Start. Community eligible provision, the entire population of a school or PSU is eligible for the National School Lunch Program. At least 40% of the enrollment is identified as NSLP eligible. Title I eligible schools receive financial support, high percentages of low-income students. And then the school accountability reporting and education performance, students' performance on the EOC, EOG, academic growth, school performance grade, long-term goals, graduation rates, schools identified for support and improvement, ACT reports, SAT, and AP reports. And school report cards, the district profile, the school count, the student enrollment, school status, 4-year graduation rate, college and career ready, educator performance and qualifications, and the student absenteeism. All of these are components of CEDARS.
Mm-hmm.
So my question was the modules for how many modules are there for administrators? And I listed them out. I came up with 7. The SIS, the course and grade data, assessment and performance data, teacher and staff data, attendance and discipline tracking, special programs and services, and then post-secondary readiness and career planning. The SIS, it tracks demographic information, enrollments, and mobility of students across North Carolina. The course and grade data, it monitors course enrollments, completions, and grades at various grade levels. Assessment and performance data, it stores and analyzes standardized test scores and academic performance metrics, teacher and staff data, and maintains records on educator certifications, qualifications, and evaluations, attendance and discipline tracking, logs students' attendance, tardiness, suspensions, and disciplinary actions, special programs and services. It tracks participation in special education, gifted programs, English language learner services, and then post-secondary readiness and career planning supports college and career readiness tracking, including career and technical education CTE pathways. And there were a lot of policies associated with CEDARS and all of the compliance. And I just listed them. I dare not try to go through all of them. There are civil rights policies, as well as Every Student Succeed Act policies, as well as the PPRA policy, and then FERPA. So some implication for my district and myself. The benefits, it improved decision-making based on the data, assists with development of district and school goals and strategies. It supports the development of school improvement plans. It enhanced tracking of student progress and school performance, and it streamlines reporting of federal and state requirements. Some challenges, data security and privacy concerns, high reliance on accurate data input from schools and teachers, training and technical support for teachers, and then training and professional development on board policies and adherence to those policies. So some lessons learned regarding the data calendar and compliance. There are consequences for deadlines and superintendent submissions. Compensation can be withheld. And as the CTE director, there are data categories that I am responsible for listed on the data calendar. The CTE concentrator calculation report, the CTE concentrator feedback survey, the CTE proof of learning and credential results, and then the local CTE plan. And have to be in compliance with Perkins Law, Title I, and general statutes. Other lessons learned regarding the laws and policies of CEDARS. Basically, all components of CEDARS are regulated by federal laws, general statutes, state board of education policies, and school board policies. School districts must carefully manage how student data is stored, reported, and protected. Findings from CEDARS can drive laws and policies, and non-compliance with laws and regulations can be negatively affect funding. Yeah, can negatively affect funding. That's all I have.
All right, go back one slide.
Right here.
All right, over on the challenges side, Vondia, that was excellent. Oh, I'm just so excited. That was a great presentation. High reliance on accurate data input from schools and teachers. All right, you can stop your sharing now.
Okay.
All right. So the big takeaway from me tonight and what I've been advocating and trying to stress upon you is being honest, being ethical, being legal, being moral. You got to report. All this stuff feeds. The disciplinary data feeds in this, your student test scores, your teacher evaluation, everything. If you don't put good stuff in there, A, they'll catch you and fire you, or B, you won't be able to get grants and it'll mess up your EVOS calculations. You know, this is where EVOS comes from. When we talk about the 10 variables in EVOS, you know, father's income and mother's education, people say, well, where's that stuff? Well, it's right there in CEDARS. We collect all that stuff. And that's where we go and get that data, previous test scores. That's one of the 10 variables. When we do the EVOS calculation, what a kid got to score to get his growth, it comes from CEDARS. Everything goes in there, all the OCR, so all the OCR, Office of Civil Rights, disciplinary data, everything's got to go in there. But we can only pull it out to use it in policy or when we're writing grants or any of that if we put it in to start with and it's accurate. You might save yourself a little grief on shaving your numbers on this, but then it'll circle back and get you though. I'm just telling you, if you don't get caught still, it'll circle back and get you. Because at some point, just like at Gardner Webb, the current dean, when he was the new dean, he came in over the summer. I'm the only one there because I'm the oldest rat in the barn. I work all year round. Otherwise, I'd have to go home. So I was there, and he come running down. I mean, he was in a trot when he came running down to my office and said, "Where did you get this data?" And I said, "Pulled it out of TaskStream." He said, "How'd you do that?" I said, "Well, I built all the DRS for the graduate programs, and I built the reports that go with them because I don't have time to sit. And we got a lot of numbers. I don't have time to sit and calculate all that stuff by hand. I'd probably have to take my shoes off." So I just, built the DRFs, have them put it in, and I built reports that go along with it, and I just pull it out. He said, "Can you do that for the undergraduate people?" And I said, "No." He said, "Why not?" I said, "They didn't put any data in." He said, "What?" I said, "I built them to DRFs. I just never bothered to put anything in it." "Well, what are we going to do when it comes time for, Cape's coming in a month? What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, that's why they hired you. Figure out what you're going to do over the next month. The creditors are coming in. You got no data for your undergraduate side because they didn't bother to put it in." They met every day for a month. He made them all come in. They had to come in for a month while they were off to sit and recap. And that's how long it took them to put the whole bunch, about 9 of them, to go back and manually pull all their data. I pulled all of them on the graduate side on about 10 or 15 minutes and went home. Seriously, they worked 20 days, about 10 hours a day to pull their data. And it still wasn't right. And they still got 2 stipulations and 5 AFIs. That's why we have a new bunch in elementary ed now. The chickens will come home to roost, folks. Insert overused metaphor here, but it'll come back on you. It will come back on you. That's why we got a different bunch now. And we're in Cape cycle again. If they don't do any better this time, we'll have a new bunch next year. The bill comes due. The bill always comes due. But as a policymaker, as a person carrying out the law, you need good numbers. You need good numbers. You can fool everybody else, but don't fool yourself, folks. It wasn't called Cedars when I was in, but it was called the data warehouse then. But you better believe in the central office, we were pulling something out of it every day, especially when we were trying to do grants and run new programs, trying to support our numbers, arguing over how much money we should be getting. But you got to put, garbage in, garbage out. You got to put your stuff in. It's got to be complete and accurate. It's got to be complete and accurate. As a pastor I had at my wife's, where we got married, my wife's Baptist church, he said, "Don't cheat the Lord now." That 10%, that's gross, not net. Don't be cheating on, don't be thumping your numbers. Don't cheat the Lord. That's kind of the basis of tonight is accurate reporting. Policymakers need accurate data in order to make accurate policies that work. And there's penalties if you aren't honest and ethical, and they're very severe, very severe. All right, I don't know of anything else. I told everything I knew and some things I didn't. Has anybody else got anything for the good of the group tonight? We finished 15 minutes early. Somebody write that down. Y'all said it would never happen. We finished 15 minutes early tonight. Look at us. Y'all did a great job. I am looking forward to the weekend. Let's see now. What are we doing this weekend, food wise? Y'all are on your own for lunch this week because we had lunch last time. Y'all are on your own. What, we gonna do anything special for breakfast, or are we gonna save that for next time? Are we doing biscuits or something? No, let's do biscuits the last time. We'll do I'll just do the regular pastries this week, and we'll do a biscuit breakfast at the last weekend on Saturday. And we'll do the biscuit order. All right. So we'll just do pastries this time and coffee. Is everybody good with that? Bring some water and somebody bring some food. Yeah. I like grapes. I've got a picture of me riding a hobby horse before I was old enough to go to school eating grapes. And so, yeah, I've been a grape man my whole life. All right. So I will see y'all Saturday. I'll put something out at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. If the weather looks iffy, I'll make a call then. All right. Everybody good? All right. I'll see you Saturday. If you need to see me, I can stop the recording and stay on.
I was just gonna say I'll be watching because I'm driving